Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Johnny Sue is still spinning on those ones and twos. How you feeling, fam?
I'm feeling good, fam.
The police knocked on the door this morning.
Uh-huh.
They wanted to speak to you.
Uh-huh.
They said you committed a crime.
I did.
Yes.
Yes.
Assault and battery.
How to get away with murder.
I don't know. Nah,
Apparently, I murdered Matt Binder
didn't.
last night.
I'd say you won that part of the debate, but there's open room to have another debate, friendly debate.
You're so obnoxious about that shit.
What?
Stop. Like, no, that's not how you feel. You know we fucking killed it. And stop being overtly nice. It's annoying. Like, it's not real. It's annoying. Come on. The llama doesn't like it when you do that.
Show everybody the llama.
It's sucking up for no
Fam,
reason. They don't
try to
deserve your
crush who I
sucking
am.
up.
We learned a lot from that thing. It was a learning experience yesterday. And that's what I'm happy about.
Speak for yourself. But yeah.
I had a fun time, and I hope we get to do it again on this show.
Oh, it was fun, but there were different treatments as to how I was treated and you were treated. 100%. There was a lot of mockery, like a lot of laughing and smiling whenever I spoke, a lot of interrupting me. That didn't happen with you. Obviously, I'm a little bit louder I was a little less like, oh, hi, you're so nice. But yeah. Anyway, so that's that, guys. I don't know how his viewers can say that we're nuts balls or grifters or on the right when the dude was literally arguing against Medicare for all, against fighting for Medicare for all, and admitted he was an incrementalist. I don't understand how you can possibly get that out of this argument, but you know what? Whatever, delusions, there's many. So
we did get some great responses. I did get an awesome response from somebody on Twitter. I got a new friend I'm following who actually thought about the Pope's speech when he came to Congress in 2015 and the nuances of that speech. I think it was really important because in that speech they said that you can't be so tribal and kind of like put people on sides and having to understand in a sort of way. You know, I'm sure I'm going to read the speech. I'm thinking about reading the speech and doing it in
oh God,
what's his name's voice? Eisenhower. Like do it like the Eisenhower farewell speech. Put a little scratchy noise and do the speech and read it, and that at least that one part. But
that'd be hilarious. Actually,
I think I want to do something like that because it's a great speech, and I'm glad that person reached out to me, and I'm glad that person saw that in that kind of because that's what I want to point it out. Like, you know, we can't. Things are so fucking tribal right now, and like that was the whole premise of that conversation we started off with. Is it okay to talk to this person? Is it okay to talk to that person? You don't even know these people, and you're making insinuations about them. You've never talked to them. Maybe we should get in there and talk to people, and it should be okay to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And the Black Lives Matter 757 thing, like, oh, well, they're working with these people. It's like, well, the national team, like anybody who's been up on that knows that national is like corrupt. Like they've been funneling money to certain people.
Well, I asked them that too.
What's her name? I think her name is Jasmine or not Jasmine.
The head of Black Lives Matter.
The head, I forget her name right now, but she's been outed by several people who, are for Black Lives Matter, but they're not for the organization because of the corruption. We went over that. We've gone over that. So people speaking out of their ass without knowing this information, it kind of just like, okay.
Yeah. And it was when I said, well, listen, the person who told me personally that the Boogaloo Boys
Patrice
are not...
Cullors, that was her name.
Patrice Cullors. The Boogaloo Boys were allies was a man of color, and I pointed that out. And he was like, well, I'm sorry, I'm surprised you'd go to the identity attack. I'm like, no, you're saying that these people are racist inherently. It was a man of color who told me that they weren't racist, and he's an activist of a big group. Right. Well, I've heard Black Lives Matter 757 has been removed and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, look how many groups who've broken off from Black Lives Matter National. There's a ton of them. So, it's kind of going to the whole tactic of just smear the person, smear the opponent, smear the person. That's why you don't talk about these people. You just smear them instead. And that's what the left is doing right now. And I want to say the left, the establishment left, the progressives. Oh, don't talk to this doctor. That doctor's a quack, right, Johnny?
Right.
That's what we're fucking hearing out there. Don't talk about the actual issue at hand. Oh, no. Just demean the other person to make the argument irrelevant. So, anyways, fam, let's get to it real quick. We got hello, mates, from Trey Wright. Trey Wright, you sexy son of a bitch. I love you. Hugs, kisses, hug, kiss. You're the best, Trey. Hit me up anytime. Reeve Barker, thank you for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch, fam. Way to get started with your latte, just like that. Jackie Pagao is also here. Hey, fam.
Jackie.
Glad to catch you live. Crazy weather. It's going to be 104 today and 106 tomorrow here in Northern Oregon. Our second massive heat wave this summer.
Yep.
Who would ever want to live in that Seattle,
Oregon's
area?
3 hours. Well, depends on where she's at in
Same
Oregon,
area,
but Portland is 3
fam.
hours away, and it's way hotter here, and it's way hotter in Vegas all the time. So stop, Oz. If you're listening, don't put up with this shit.
Okay. Trey Wright also left another one and says, Fee, can you move to Jacksonville? My crush on you has increased by a lot since you murdered Matt Bin Bin.
Okay,
called him
Trey,
Matt
I
Bin
love
Bin.
you, but Jacksonville is one of the cities I hate the most. I will steal you from Jacksonville, okay? But I hate Jacksonville.
Fam, don't
Who
talk
wants to
this.
live in Jacksonville?
You're going to piss
Come on.
off Shadowban Refugee, and he's going to get really jealous and upset, and he's going to come into the chat screaming and yelling like Paulie does.
No.
Don't do that, please.
Polyamorous.
All right, fam, we got to jump into this real quick because we have a guest in less than 20 minutes. This is a short section, but we got to talk about it. Today's guests are great, guys. Get on over to Rokfin, Rokfin. Much love to the people on YouTube. We know we care about you, but they have us demonetized over there. They're going to probably shadow ban this show. They always do that. So get over to Rokfin where we have our vocal revolution and we can say what we want when we want. No fucks given, right? Max Keiser and Stacy Herbert will be here later, and we will find out how to say her last name. So, fam, this category over here, it's crazy. The world is like burning right now.
Yeah, literally.
And no one's talking about it.
No.
Like, it's not all over the news. I mean, I see
There's
some of
too
our...
much going on in the news
there
cycle, too.
Everybody's so much like just, with the COVID stuff and the boop boop, arguing about this and that. The world is on fire. And I'm talking, it's kind of weird because it's actually burning in places that normally don't burn. Let's talk about California. We're here in this state, and the California Dixie Fire mushrooms to the state's second largest wildfire ever. Now, that was on August 8th. Johnny, if you want to play a little video real quick there and take a look.
Extreme drought, intense heat, and powerful winds are fueling the Dixie Fire that has ravaged town after town in Northern California's Sierra Mountains.
The impact of this fire is pretty tremendous, pretty tragic.
The blaze is now the largest active fire in the country, charring almost 500,000 acres, scorching an area that's roughly the size of Houston. Despite the efforts of thousands of firefighters, California's wildfires have turned hundreds of homes to rubble and ash.
It's hard to drive away from your house and wonder if you're going to see it again.
Smoke.
Look at that. Look at that. Holy cow. You can just see it. It's crazy. By today, fam, that might be the biggest fire in California history.
Wow. It's
History.
crazy because when we were coming back from Sacramento with my sister and mother, you could smell it. And it's still pretty far away from Sacramento. It's more it's more to the east, so it's more inland.
Yep.
Where it's drier,
Yep.
and it's extremely hot. It's actually hotter. It was actually hotter up north than it was down here. When I went up there, it was actually really, really hot, and I was like, "Wow, it's hotter here. That's crazy." So that's where it's at. Yep.
There was actually a shot in Las Vegas in the Strip, and it was all cloudy from this fire going in there and rolling into town. I mean, that's how far along away it is. And right now, like I said, it's the second largest in California's history. By today, it might be the first. It's just ridiculous. Everybody's evacuating left and right. But that's not the only place, fam. Would you ever think there would be fires in Siberia?
No.
The coldest-
When I heard that, I was like, "What
The
is
coldest
going on?"
city in the world, right?
Yeah.
Actually have had fires, and you can see them there. There are fires all over Siberia, in a place where even an exposed nose during the winter months can cause biting pain. People are accustomed to taking precautions against freezing temperatures, including spending extra time in the morning to dress in many layers. Well, guess what, fam? It's now blanketed by a haze of wildfires in fucking Siberia.
Right. So yeah, it's weird seeing how, like, I was just looking at temperatures up in the Pacific Northwest, and they're like in the 80s, 90s. They never get that hot there, especially by the ocean. It's really strange. You did an episode that's on our premium. Is it still on premium?
I released it from premium now.
Okay, it's on Rokfin. You guys can watch it about what Pasta talked about. And you can, get your. I'm still, not super well versed on the subject either. I'm trying to learn a lot more. I believe in climate change. I believe climate change is real. I believe that it's happening. I do believe that there are other forces too at play. There's political manipulation. There's all these things, but obviously the climate is fucked. Like, I don't know how else to put it. There's something going on here. This is not normal.
Where are we going to move? Pluto? Venus?
Well, you know
Uranus?
where Bezos is going to move. And
yeah, he's going to take a big, giant blue dick into space and try colonizing other fucking spots.
Which is very, very, phallic in itself.
You know what? It's funny, too. Yesterday during the debate, they were Binder was going after you about Tulsi, and I was like, hey, I'm the Tulsi crat up here. Why don't you go after me? But the funny thing about it is when she said the only thing bad about him going into space is that we know it's coming back. Unfortunately, the ship. Fam, Greece. Thousands flee homes as blaze ravages Greek island amid nightmarish summer. And Johnny, I got a tweet right below that, man. Holy cow, fam. Look at this over here. When you see this here, look at this is a terrifying footage from a ferry carrying passengers escaping the shores of Lake Evia in Greece. Now, look at this. It's like a fucking movie.
It is. And Greece is like, if I've been to Greece. It's a beautiful place, lots of islands. It's normally not like this hot, and it's kind of hard to move around if there's a fire, because there's islands, so you kind of have to hop on a boat on a ferry like this, or get out in a helicopter. A lot of tourists must be like, what the hell is going on? Because you go to Greece for like, serenity and peace and
can you imagine being on one of these islands and having to evacuate because of the fucking fires?
Yeah.
Johnny, there was another tweet below it. It says the Bloomberg quick take. I don't know if you want to throw that in there real quick. Just another picture right now. I mean, the old people just getting on, dogs, pets, families. Think about people whose livelihood is all crops or anything living off the land. Screwed. And if you have tourists, if your business is tourism on that island and whatnot, now you have no business.
Right.
You're gone. I mean, this is scary. It's nuts. And it's part of this whole, the world is on fire. The world is on fire, and not enough people are talking about it.
No.
We talk about an existential crisis. Mm-hmm. Also in Turkey and in Italy, same problems too as well. All over the place. It says tourists are evacuated as wildfires continue to rage in Turkey, Italy, and Greece. We cannot do anything beyond wishing the mercy of God for the lives that have lost, but we can replace everything that was burned, Turkey's president said. I don't think you can replace everything. So, and he's absolutely right. And you can see the footage, some of it's crazy as they were driving, just driving out of that. Can you imagine driving through that shit as you're just, how hot would it be as you're driving the car, number one, and all the heat on the side, and just nuts.
Yeah, it's all over the world, you're right. I mean, it's usually in California, this is like the season, right? We always have fires. But on top of the fire thing happening here, we're in an extreme drought. I think I brought up the pictures where, the reservoirs were full a few years ago when we got through the drought. Well, the drought that happened before I was here, when I got here. And then, the drought we have now is really bad, so that means like conditions are extremely dry, so fires are more likely. And it's August, so expect more this month and into September. It doesn't really get cool until like late October, early November.
It's crazy. Like I said, we did do a video. You can go check it out with Dane Whittington. Mm-hmm. Please check it out. We have to look at everything right now. I mean, I still believe being a vegan is one of the best things you can do for the environment. Obviously, it's one of the reasons why we went that route. Less cows, less meat. That means less grazing on our lands, less deforesting. But fam, we need to get somebody to make toilet paper out of hemp and replace all the toilet paper in the United States with hemp. Mm-hmm. I mean, could you imagine how much cotton that we won't have to now manufacture and stuff? All the paper, how much hemp paper can we use to replace all the paper in the world?
You could use a lot.
Well, you can write on it, you can roll it up, you could smoke it, you can do whatever you want with it. So it's pretty cool. But anyways, fam, anything to say about that with the whole fires going crazy?
I think, did you have Japan?
Oh,
and
I
think you missed Japan and Canada.
I did, my bad. How can you miss Canada? Please. Japan, and then this was in February now, but I did want to point it out because it was early in the year. It raged for more than 5 days. More households were evacuated. So that was earlier this year. They also had crazy floods in Germany this year. Wiped out villages.
Yeah.
So it seems like the world's ecosystem is a little fitzy.
Kind of mimicking what's happening right now.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
This is a month old, but
Yep.
we have to talk about it again.
Yeah.
Record heat wave. 500 people in Canada.
Yeah. They're not used to that.
No.
Like, they're not, even people, like I said, our fams in the land of Oz, they're not used to that heat. All the way from the Pacific Northwest to Vancouver, and I mean, people were like dying because they don't have, like, in Florida and even in California, they're not used to it. Because I remember when I first moved here, vast majority of apartments didn't have central AC, and I'm like, from Florida, I'm like, how do you not have central AC? What if it gets hot? They're like, oh, it usually doesn't get that hot. You just have a couple days, in the valley in Burbank, blah, blah, blah. The film crews have to, like, bring in the equipment and stuff, etc. So it's gotten progressively hotter since I've been here. Progressively hotter. I mean, it did not get this hot before. And so in Florida, you have central AC where people go in and, and they don't leave their house. They don't walk. Because it's humid and hot. In these places, you don't have that. So who dies? Old people die. People who don't have, access to nice amenities, they die. So it's scary because people need to, I don't know, change our housing, change our lifestyle, figure out like what to do as extreme temperatures. Because if you have an extreme summer, you might have an extreme winter as well.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. In Texas, there was that crazy cold winter.
Exactly.
People froze their took-us off. And that was happening around the same time that Canada was having this crazy, crazy heat wave.
Right.
That's why we have to start looking at everything when it comes to the weather right now. Something is really fucked up beyond repair. I hope we can salvage something when it comes to the earth. But you know what, fam? There's too much plastic still going around. Everybody's pointing fingers at each other like, you need to recycle more, whatnot. But yet we let these big corporations like Coke and Nestle get away with making plastic that floats in the ocean like crazy. It's taken up like the size of Texas now in our ocean. We got dead zones all over the place. We have to look at the man-made manipulation on all ends because this shit is getting out of hand. I mean, to make plastic, Johnny, we talked about this, right? You got to burn fossil fuels, right, to make it. So, I mean, why don't we stop? Another thing we can make out of bottles, hemp. Hello? There's a company in Florida. Kid, you gotta get here. You gotta get it close to the thing. Get it close to that. What's the name of the llama?
Pedro
the llama. Johnny's like, yeah. There's a company in Florida that makes beer cans. That has beers in cans, and the lid that holds everything together. Those plastic lids. The plastic, like the 6-pack lids. It's got the.
Oh, I hate those things.
Okay.
I always break them.
I know they're
see
the
them.
worst. They're crazy, but they end up in the ocean.
Yes, and
they end up
kill
in
animals.
turtles' noses and stuff, and really kill them. This company has made them out of fish food. So in other words, when they end up in the water, it turns into
That's amazing.
fish food.
That's amazing.
That's what we need. Shit like that.
Shit like that.
Okay, let's read some super rays. We have 220 people watching on the YouTube. It's going to get over to the
Let's get
Rokfin.
that number higher. And besides, our last section is going to be
Rokfin only.
discussing the vaccine mandates. So it's going to be Rokfin only. Just
Fam,
so
we got to
guys
say boop boop mandates.
know. Fam,
Boop boops.
I will not say that.
Boop boop.
I'm not 3.
Okay. So we have a couple messages here, fam. One's especially for you.
Aw.
Anna Mares, thank you so much. Howdy, fam. We need to be cheered up with the Assange news that has broken my heart.
Anna Maris, we're
We
going to
know.
talk about that. We added a section today. I'm working on a panel for tomorrow to discuss it at length because I know our fams are, very invested in this. It's very, very sad. It's expected, though. The United States, we know, how, we're an imperialistic, murderous assholes. So it's expected.
That's what it is. Okay, the next one, fam, this is for you. It's from Shadowban Refugee. It says, proceeds to scream and yell like Paulie does. Also, Burkay has better food and culture than Jacksonville. I'm guessing Burkay is in New Mexico.
Oh, I've never been, actually. So I do want to go to Epstein Ranch and investigate what's going on there. So Shadow Band, arm a platoon, and we'll do it.
There's a lot of stories that Shadow Band Refugee has going out there that we can talk about. Shadow Band Refugee, hit me up. Remember, Paulie, we're supposed to talk about the infrastructure bill. I'm counting on you to give us the scoop. Roar Media's here, fam. Shadow Band, this show? Are you kidding, Pasta? Your show is one of a kind. My sisters and brother Fee and Johnny, we love you all. They want to launch you into the sun. We love your sister Fee, brother P, and Johnny Sue. Keep it real. If I had overalls, I'd do a better imitation of Oz.
Fam, I don't even know what that was. That was weird.
It was a bad imitation of Oz. That's what it was. I have to work on it. I'll get my overalls. I'll get my hat. I'll get it done. Reeve Barker, thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution. I was at Lake Tahoe over the weekend. The basin was filled with smoke, fam. Messed up the vacation a little. Still won at blackjack, though. So I got that going for me. Reeve Barker, how you doing? It's great to see you. I'm glad you won at blackjack. If you ever want any poker lessons, let me know. Jim Garrison, great show with Wigington yesterday, Pasta. Jim, thank you very much for the support. It's really hard to do those shows right now. It's a new subject for all of us. But, we have to ask the questions. And when you get into that topic, you can get ridiculed sometimes. But I'm not there yet. I'm still kind of like one eye open. But, there are questions to be asked and answers to be had. Question for Max and Stacy, and this is from Ronnie Graham. Max and Stacy are well worth the following. I've been following them for years. I do not always agree, but they provide insight that is important for ordinary people that do not have money to invest. What is their recommendation for people who do not have much money, they don't know what to do with it, and ask others to tell them what to do with it all? So pretty much, what do you do? We'll ask Max and Stacy, what do you do if you don't have a lot of money?
Right.
How do you find a way to invest and get in the game when there's all these big wigs that are throwing tons of money left and right into Bitcoin? Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do my Max impression today while he's on the show because I don't want to embarrass myself and bust his balls, but maybe eventually. Are they on yet, Johnny? All right. Let me send a quick message. Fam, give me a second if you could.
All right. While they're checking that, I just wanted to comment a little bit on last night's debate. If you guys saw it, if you guys didn't see it, you should watch it. Also, I was catching some of the Fred Hampton left with Dr. Cornel West, which was really good. And I think Misty is going to be on Fred Hampton today to discuss the Assange case from the beginning. So if you haven't followed the Assange case, Misty is, an activist that is extremely well versed in that subject, and I think just having like a recap from the beginning will be really good. So definitely catch that whenever you can. I will also be on FHL on Tuesday, so I'll let you guys know.
FHL?
Yes.
All right, we're going to go on a quick 2-second break. We'll be right back. Get everybody to come over to Rokfin. Max and Stacy come. All right, everybody, welcome back. We have our guest ready, ladies and gentlemen. He is the star of the RT show, The Keiser Report, which I watch a lot of. But now, just recently, for getting ready for this show, doing some research, fam, I watched a show called the Orange Pill Podcast. It's one of the craziest shows on the intranet. You can call it No Fucks Given, because this guy does not give a fudge. The Keiser himself is here. Max, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm a fan of the show, and let's get it on.
Oh, man, you're giving me goosebumps when you say that stuff. I got to just say this much before we get started. I do watch the Keiser Report a lot, but now after watching the Orange Pill Podcast, I am hooked, and I encourage everybody, go watch the Orange Pill Podcast. I feel bad for Nassim, that fat bastard who eats that black squid ink pasta and shit, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah. I mean, just an amazing show, an incredible show. I can't wait to watch more of it. So thank you so much, and say hi to Stacy. And one last question. Is it Adair or Herbert?
Herbert.
Told ya.
I just lost a bet. I
Thank
just
you.
lost 1/20th of a Bitcoin on that one. So, fam, why don't you start us off?
All right. So we're going to start with the basics here, because many people might not really be introduced into Bitcoin. So what gives Bitcoin its value, and what was the initial purpose of Bitcoin?
Right. And before I start, I just wanted to frame this a little bit by saying that just Bitcoin should be of particular interest to anybody who identifies as the working class or progressive. I think that Bitcoin has something that needs to be explored by progressives. But to get into your question about what gives Bitcoin value, you know, this is in 2009 was the culmination really of 20 years of research by computer scientists and programmers looking for how to create digital, absolutely scarce synthetic digital gold, right? Can you create digital gold on a digital version for the internet? Is it possible? And there were many attempts to do this. I myself was involved in something in the 1990s called the Hollywood Stock Exchange, which is a company I started. I was a CEO for a while, and I have a patent on a digital currency, patent number 5950176. So it's a digital currency, and there were many at that time as part of the gaming industry. In the gaming industry, it was big when the internet first started, and there was a lot of different attempts at creating gaming currencies. The difference being that in a gaming currency environment, and really it's true for many environments where you have people talking about money and currency, is that it's centralized. And every time you have a centralized entity controlling the money, there's a possibility that that central entity can corrupt the money. And so certainly in the gaming environment with a digital money, you know, that's the reason you wouldn't have World of Witchcraft magical swords. You know, you couldn't go to your local deli and buy a sandwich with it. It couldn't come out of the internet because nobody would trust that the people who were behind it wouldn't just print gazillions of them and destroy it, right? There has to be some integrity. That's why, you know, dollars carry serial numbers, and there's anti-counterfeiting technology in dollars. Right? Counterfeiting is a no-no. And so anyway, the quest continued. Like, how is it possible to create something that you can't counterfeit it, and it's absolutely scarce, and you can use it as real money like you would use gold on the internet? So finally in 2009, the Bitcoin protocol was launched onto the internet, and this was the beginning now of a new era in money. It's an absolutely scarce digital synthetic commodity, and so it's backed, I guess you could say, by the same thing that backs any form of money principally, is its scarcity, right? Scarcity drives valuation. That's why throughout history you have the reason cowrie shells were used as money for a while is because where they were located in that area of the world is because they were scarce. Beads, have been used as money, and crafted beads have been used as money because they're relatively scarce. Gold is definitely, it's relatively scarce. You find it all over the world. It has other attributes like it's portable, it's fungible, it's divisible, but it's scarce. It's the one element on the periodic table that has all of these various attributes that make it good money. Aristotle said it was perfect money, and others have said throughout history they like the gold as money for those reasons. And so then along comes Bitcoin, and it makes the bold claim that it does everything gold does and more, but it's digital. And so for many years, I got involved in 2011 when it was $1. And having had the gaming experience that I had, I immediately started to get into it and buy it and talk about it. And on the Keiser report, we've been talking about it for years now. We have millions of viewers all over the world, and a lot of people got into it. And so after a few years, it started to catch on, and people started to understand that, in fact, it can be used as money for these reasons. And it has some really fascinating characteristics that you don't have with either the US dollar or gold. For example, it's unconfiscatable. So the Bitcoin that I own is behind the wall of encryption that's impenetrable. No government, no corporation has access to this. Number two, it's uncensorable. So you and I can transact with Bitcoin and you don't need a third party. We don't need, there's nobody that can stop it. Twitter, a corporation, Google, it's uncensorable. Nobody can stop us from transacting using Bitcoin. In that respect, it's similar to P2P file swapping you have with the music industry and the Pirate Bay and things like that. They're just totally distributed network of computers that hold copies of all these files, and there's no way to attack it. Because it's replicated in innumerable places. It's the list goes on from there. So to the short answer to the question is that it's backed principally by its scarcity. And this is important in a world today where you have central banks really going crazy printing money. So in the United States in the last 18 months, more than 40% of all the money that's ever been created in 240 years of American history was created. I mean, literally, they're hyperbolically off the charts printing the money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that debases the value, mm-hmm. right? It's supply and demand. If you keep printing something, it debases the value. So that's why you have things like Bitcoin going up the way it is, but also you see the same assets as they're called. You have fine art. You have, East Hampton homes, the assets that are held by the top 1% are all zooming up in value because of all this rampant, out of control money printing. And so people are protecting themselves from this now with Bitcoin. And we see it a lot in the Gen Z and millennials who are already native to the internet. It's very natural for them to buy Bitcoin and not really go into gold, because the gold is seen really as, old fashioned.
Yeah. Well, Max, my mom is watching the show today, and to get her to invest in Bitcoin is like pulling teeth. Her money manager, she has so much money in the market, and she refuses to really give me a decent amount of a big chunk of change to put into Bitcoin. I tell her it's still early, and when I try to explain to her the way it gets its value, is not just the scarcity in which it's created, but the fact that other currencies are putting into it in exchange for the Bitcoin. Is that also a proper way to explain the way that Bitcoin gets its value from other global currencies swapping out for it, or am I missing the point there?
Well, what you're describing there is, supply and demand. So what's the demand for Bitcoin? And the demand is for anybody who's looking for a store of value that will keep the value in the face of all this money printing that's going on. So your mom or somebody in that demographic, they're always looking for ways to protect themselves against inflation, because typically retirees are on fixed incomes. And inflation's a real problem because as over the years, the prices go up faster than the fixed income they're getting every year from their retirement accounts. So they need a way to protect against that. Typically, people protect against that in the stock market. The bond market is the yield, what the interest paid on bonds is horrible. So people are not really getting that kind of return on bonds anymore. And so they look to gold has been a good hedge against that inflation over the years. And what's emerged is that a lot of people now who are just looking for a way to preserve their purchasing power in the face of inflation, they understand that with Bitcoin is a way to protect themselves against that rise of inflation. Now, obviously, in an older demographic that's not internet savvy, didn't grow up with the internet, it's very difficult to explain the technical aspects of Bitcoin. But that would be true with email. I mean, have somebody describe the protocol that drives email, who's somebody in their 60s, 50s or 60s or 70s, and they would be, it'd be a challenge for them to do so, right? Because there is a technical aspect to it that one can dive into. But what we know after 12 years now, is that it's working, and that those who would see it as a threat have been attacking it without success. And in countries like El Salvador, they're making it legal tender. In countries like Nigeria, the whole country is becoming hyper-Bitcoinization, meaning that they're using Bitcoin as their basic unit of account. Things are priced in Bitcoin, they're paid in Bitcoin, they use Bitcoin. Bitcoin is their reserve currency. Bitcoin is the main currency. Yeah. So it's the adoption's being driven by countries that are in dire straits, where there is hyperinflation, like in Latin America. Obviously, there's a history of inflation and hyperinflation. So this is a real godsend. So a country like El Salvador, within a year or two, the entire country will be completely onto Bitcoin. And we're seeing that spread to other countries in the region. We're seeing it in Africa. In the U.S., of course, they are the chief beneficiary of having the U.S. dollar as world reserve currency. And so there's not the urgency, because we still have tremendous benefit from that. And, we've still kind of coasting on the post-World War II boom, really. I mean, to be quite honest about it, the U.S. has been, in the catbird seat, easy street now for 70, 80 years. They haven't really had much of a challenge out there. But that's changing now. So I think particularly for the younger generations, it's important to understand that the U.S. role in the world is changing, and that things, are going to be a lot more, I think, let's call it competitive going forward. Now, just a quick side note, if you are a worker, if you're in the working class and you make money, you make a paycheck, and you want to preserve the purchasing power of that paycheck, you don't, because otherwise every single year, the purchasing power of that money that you're paid in, that fiat money, goes down. You go to the grocery store, it takes more dollars to buy the same basket of goods because they keep printing it. If you want to protect yourself against the inflation, you got to do so. And Bitcoin is an excellent way to do it.
Yeah. You want to get for number two? You want to get it?
Oh.
Well, all right. What's the difference between proof of stake versus proof of work? I know either different cryptocurrencies will use either one as part of their mining process or creating process, and I don't want to get too deep for people who are kind of still learning about crypto, but can you explain the difference between proof of work and proof of stake?
Right. So proof of stake is the governance model is depending on how much of it you actually own, versus proof of work, the governance model is tied to the hashing algorithm, which requires a tremendous amount of computational power to mine what are called blocks. And the reason this is an interesting topic these days is because the proof of work system is being portrayed as overly energy intensive, and not particularly worth it, whereas proof of stake is being portrayed as being not using as much energy and therefore should be considered as a substitute. The problem with proof of stake is that it essentially replicates the fiat money system as we know it today. We live in a world today where the governance model of America is he who's got the most bucks makes the laws, right? I mean, that's the way it is, sadly, but it's a plutocracy. And proof of stake simply replicates a plutocracy, but digitally. So it doesn't really work as money. Whereas proof of work does work as money, and it does create egalitarianism in a lot of ways, and it does offer a way for people to get rid of the influences of a plutocracy or a kleptocracy. So in my view, it is vastly superior. Now, the energy consideration is, I think, misunderstood to a large degree. First of all, how much energy does Bitcoin use? It uses less than 1/10 of 1% of global energy. There's about 160,000 terawatt of energy used in the globe annually. Bitcoin uses 1/10 of 1%. 30% of all that energy used globally is wasted energy. It's energy that is wasted as energy is transported from point A to point B. A lot of it is wasted, or gas rigs, they flare gas because there's a lot of wasted energy. Bitcoin is actually in the process of capturing that wasted energy, because Bitcoin miners are very, very portable. So you can go to a gas well that's flaring gas out in the middle of nowhere that's not connected to any grid, and you can install a Bitcoin miner, capture that energy, mine Bitcoin, and actually repurpose that energy from what would have been wasted energy anyway. Yes. So
like
there's
El
a lot
Salvador,
of
pretty much with the volcanoes.
El Salvador is going to be harnessing volcanic energy, which is essentially almost free energy for them. And as a result, they're going to be increasing their coffers in the country by $2 billion next year. GDP is set to triple. Real estate prices are moving up. It's completely turning around the situation. And they're outside of the auspices of the IMF and the colonial interests of America, and they are achieving true independence, which is fantastic. And that's why other countries in the area are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that you and Stacy should meet us down in El Salvador on September 7th when they go, Bitcoin. Let's buy a pupusa on the street with some Bitcoin. Let's do it.
Yeah, Bitcoin Beach and El Zonte they have entered into hyper Bitcoinization, so they are essentially using Bitcoin as their unit of account, as everything is priced in Bitcoin. They use Bitcoin, they save in Bitcoin. And for a country like El Salvador, they don't need to have a central bank. They don't need to rely on the IMF because Bitcoin comes with its own monetary policy. So kind of outsourcing your monetary policy to Bitcoin protocol, where it's built in algorithmically into the protocol, the monetary policy of every 10 minutes we get new coins.
Yeah.
Every 4 years, the amount of those coins is cut in half. And this goes on for the next 100 years. And so it's a way to, you save on all the infrastructure and bureaucracy of having to have a central bank. Because central banks, you don't need a central bank. You don't need the Federal Reserve Bank. You don't need the Bank of England, Bank of Japan. These institutions are obviated, obsolesced by Bitcoin.
Does the difference between proof of stake and proof of work determine what a shitcoin is?
In my view, the problem is between decentralization and centralization. So Bitcoin is really the only true decentralized coin. Everything else, including Ethereum and all the proof of stake coins and every other one of the other 10,000 coins, are all centralized, either absolutely centralized or relatively centralized. And when you have like Ethereum is a very popular coin, but it's centralized in that instead of having thousands of nodes around the world running the network independently of each other, giving it some robustness and anti-fragility, instead you have nodes running on like Amazon servers and clustered in easily reached, easily hacked locations, and it can be turned off. Now that the government is getting, quite agitated about Bitcoin, it seems, they're going after this industry, and the only coin that they can't touch is Bitcoin. Every single one out there they can attack, and they will attack because they're on the warpath, and they're going to take them all down, in my view, and they can easily take them all down because they're centralized. You just call up the people that are running it, and you go from there. So Bitcoin is the only one that's actually truly decentralized. Everything else is kind of pretending to be Bitcoin, but they failed. Nothing has come close, not remotely close. And now that we're going to see a migration, in my view, from all those thousands of pretenders, they're all going to drop down to zero, basically, and that capital is going to flow into Bitcoin. And that'll be another boost into the demand for Bitcoin.
Johnny, do you want to ask something?
Yeah. Hey, Max, this is Johnny. I engineer the show.
Hey, Johnny.
So in the infrastructure bill, they added something about Bitcoin. I don't know if you can explain a little bit on that. It looks like they're trying to acquire information of people who are purchasing cryptocurrency, is what it seems like.
Right. So the infrastructure bill, which is now circulating in Washington, they decided to put in some language pertaining to Bitcoin and crypto. So this is one of those interesting things about the way laws are made in America. It doesn't really pertain to infrastructure as such, but they decided to put it in there anyway. So the government is now on alert that Bitcoin is challenging the way America operates its economy, with the center being the Federal Reserve Bank, and politicians are starting to fight it. So this is the first major political attempt in the Senate we've seen where now there's a fight between those who are pro-Federal Reserve and paper money versus Bitcoin. So the bill is trying to label different aspects of the infrastructure as a broker and therefore qualify for various disclosure. And they're trying to go on this very broad stroke approach, nothing specific, nothing technical, just very, very broad language, trying to just get as much as they possibly can without really thinking deeply about what they're doing. Interestingly, the language seems to have a carve out for Bitcoin. It seems to attack the altcoins. It says in the language in the bill that, well, actually Bitcoin is something that we can't do much about. The genie is out of the bottle. But let's go after DeFi. Let's go after proof of stake. Let's go after these other altcoins, which is they're setting that up. And that's probably what they'll do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't impact Bitcoin because Bitcoin is a global market. And it's, I always say that governments don't ban Bitcoin. Bitcoin bans governments. If the U.S. is stupid enough not to get into the Bitcoin game now, and even though, as Senator Cynthia Lummis has said, it's late in the game. The U.S. is lagging at this point. If they really want to take that route and be laggards in the 21st century and let these other smaller entrepreneurial countries become dominant in the 21st century, I mean, that would be a terrible move that they could make. But hopefully they'll come to their senses. And most of all of the countries that have tried to ban Bitcoin so far have failed. And what we're seeing is a pattern of capitulation followed by a reversal. So they actively want to get into the mining of Bitcoin. They want to get into the storing and hoarding of Bitcoin. And that'll be the 21st century world war. Will be a hash war. Countries are going to be competing aggressively to get as much Bitcoin as they possibly can because it's the hardest money ever in history of humans, and it'll be the global standard. So it's like a space race of the 1960s. This is the hash race, which is materializing now. We see it. Different countries are starting to enter the fray. The U.S., like they were late to the space race, they are late to the hash race. But, if they focus and they get into it, I hope the U.S. does, and they can do great. But they have to change their mindset.
Yeah. Well, let's digress really quick back to the technology of some of the shit coins, because we're here doing the show. We've been demonetized on YouTube now for like 6 months. The way we make monetary gains is with this platform called Rokfin, which has the Ray token, and the Ray token is part of the Ethereum network. Now, isn't the technology of crypto useful too as well, though? Not just the fact that Bitcoin is the best monetary system, but when you look at stuff like the blockchain, we're election junkies. Can't the technology be used for other things like Ethereum and Maddox for the future? Because if we can implement an open source blockchain technology into the tabulations of our elections, that is awesome. So won't some cryptos find a way to exist, even though the fact they are proof of work? Proof of stake?
Right. They're not money.
Yeah.
So they're tokens that can be used interoperably in and out of fiat. The Rokfin model is, I'm familiar with it, but again, it's built on Ethereum, and Ethereum is not secure and it's not stable. Nobody knows how many Ethereum there are. There's never been an audit. It's highly centralized, and transactions have been reversed. And like just this past week, we had a major hack. $600 million were stolen from an exchange, Poly something, that's built on Ethereum, and Ethereum is part of the network. And that's been the history of Ethereum. It's basically a gateway to scams. It's like every single major scam is built on Ethereum. That's the primary use case is for scams. But I understand that. I mean, okay, can you streamline voting? Can you are there applications? Yeah, that's it's basically there's nothing different than a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet. It's a glorified spreadsheet, and you can do a lot with a spreadsheet. And there's a lot you could do. The problem is that, okay, let's go to Washington, D.C. and say, hey, you know what? We've got this spreadsheet enabled, quote unquote, crypto, and we're going to make voting absolutely secure and unambiguous, and it's going to be a vast improvement. And they'll look at you like, yeah, but the way it works here is we're elected because the voting is fraudulent. That's why we're sitting here, right? We don't want a good system. So then you have to say, well, because the government is basically is dysfunctional for a lot of reasons. You can get into it because it sits on top of paper money that's garbage. So, change the money first, and then you'll see incentives within the economy change. You'll see the politics change. You'll see people's attitude change. You'll see a lot of things change if you have Bitcoin as the standard, which is real money that audits itself every 10 minutes. It's self-auditing. Every 10 minutes, every transaction in the entire Bitcoin history is audited. And this goes on TikTok new block. That's essentially what a block is. It's the result of auditing every single transaction that's ever occurred ever since January 3rd, 2009, and it's totally transparent. Anyone can see it. So if swap that out for fiat dollars, for paper money, and then you have a substantial change in the economy, as well as everything connected to the economy. And you have the Bitcoin community are a community of savers, not a community of spenders. That's very different. I grew up in the 80s, so it was always about 70s and 80s. So it's always about shop till you drop, conspicuous consumption, lifestyles of the rich and famous. If you talk to Bitcoiners who are in their 20s and 30s, they're like, I'm selling my chair to buy more Bitcoin. I'm frugal because I want more Bitcoin. Now think about that. Ben Franklin said a penny saved is a penny earned. You can't have a working economy. You can't have a capitalist economy without capital. And you can't have capital without offering people a return on their savings. And you can't have a return on your savings with interest rates by the Federal Reserve are zero. Interest rates at zero or near zero is essentially an act of financial terrorism. I'm not trying to be glib here. In my view, it's an act of financial terrorism for the Federal Reserve Bank to keep interest rates down to where they are, near zero. That's saying the value of your work is worth zero. The value of your savings are worth zero. Your value is zero. Okay, that's the message from the Federal Reserve. Okay, are we as Americans going to take that? Are we really going to take that insult? That's outrageous.
Jonny, did you want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Do you see any possibilities in which Bitcoin can be actually be controlled or manipulated by the government? I imagine I was thinking about this myself. Oh my bad. Sorry, my mic was off. Are there any possibilities in which Bitcoin can actually be controlled or manipulated? I myself imagine martial law being put into place and Bitcoin assets being forcibly seized in a worst case scenario. In scenarios I was just thinking about, right? And I don't think the empire is beneath that. I also see them spending trillions of dollars to come up with a way to disable electronic networks, but I guess the ledger could be saved on people's hard drives. So do you see any possibilities in which Bitcoin can actually be controlled or manipulated by the government?
No, you can't seize Bitcoin. It's unconfiscatable. You have a 12-word seed phrase memorized in my head that corresponds to the coins that I own in the network. And anywhere in the world, I can walk through the airport naked, fly to Barbados, sit down, and there's my Bitcoin. And nobody can seize it. It's unseizable. And because the government does not have the computational power to hack the system, because the system's running on 60 quintillion calculations per second. To give you an idea how big that is, there's approximately 7 quintillion grains of sand on planet Earth. The Bitcoin network's running at 10 times that calculations per second. And it's the biggest, distributed network of computer ever. And it's growing quite substantially as people are fleeing the fiat money world. So no government at this point has the power or the money to attack it. No group of governments. So the coins are unseizable. They're behind an impenetrable encrypted wall. So what will the U.S. government do? The U.S. government will attack it as they're starting to do in Washington right now, they're trying to figure out, well, how do we attack the on-ramp? Do we attack the off-ramp? Do we introduce special taxes? But keep in mind that the government runs on fiat money. And the only way they can keep going is to keep printing fiat money, which increases the attraction and value of Bitcoin. And so what we're seeing in the Senate, we already have 3 senators right now who are Bitcoiners. We have a 5th column inside the Senate. We have Bitcoiners inside the government who are working for Bitcoiners and against the government. I mean, they wouldn't say they're working against the government, but they are. So they are actively working to stage an actual insurrection. Not that insurrection of January 6th that people are all outraged about. There's a genuine insurrection going on in America right now with senators and congressmen and women who are Bitcoiners staging a Boston Tea Party-like insurrection right now, because that's what Bitcoin is. And it'll spread like wildfire because they only operate on fiat money. The only answer to every problem in America is print more money. And so that drives the value down and Bitcoin up. You know, I mean, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, she's somebody who loves making money, right? Since she took office, I mean, her net worth went up $50-60 million or more. She loves the money, right? So if Nancy Pelosi, you know, learns about Bitcoin and understands that, well, all of her policies are driving her other investments to the ground because they're priced in dollars, and here's a way to save it with Bitcoin. Believe me, she'll be one of the first, you know. Attention, you know, let's get Bitcoin, right? So it's just human nature. Yeah. And so we're flipping Congress. This is the real insurrection. This is January 3rd, 2009 was the new revolution, and it's penetrating America right now.
So I'm the designated commie here. So I have some questions for you from that aspect. A lot of the criticisms from the far left is it's still capitalism and capitalism will fall. What will Bitcoin do if that happens, and how would that look like in a different system? How could Bitcoin function if the empire falls, kind of along the same lines of what Jonny said? And as for the working class that barely has enough to pay their rent and get by, why would they invest in something that they see as a risk, right? Because they need food, they need shelter, they need to pay for their medical bills. Why should they invest in something in a system that is falling apart?
Right. So let's explore the idea. They're barely getting by, right? They're just getting by. Okay. Let's examine why that is. You know, one of the big reasons why that is, you know, if you study, you know, Marxism and the Communist Manifesto and the history of communism, you know, the problem is that the people in the control, the people at the top, are always finding new ways to subjugate and suppress the working class or the underclass. And this is done in America and around the world today in our modern era, using the power of the money, of the printing press. You know, going back to Reagan, which was really a seminal moment in this whole history of this, when he fired the air traffic controllers. You know, that was the end of organized labor in America to a large degree. And the financiers on Wall Street figured out that when we deregulate, you know, capitalism, there's different, let's call it, you know, financial capitalism, because we live in a world of financialized capitalism of banks who control much more than, let's say, the capitalism of earlier eras, which were driven by factory owners and landowners. You know, the capitalism today is financiers and financialism, and so we look at that and we say under the Reagan era, there was this period of deregulation. And what that brought us was a way for bankers to print money in a market that was just starting at that time, called the derivatives market. You know, the derivatives market is just an expansion of credit into these incredibly stretched layers of debt upon debt upon debt. And to do that in a way that didn't touch labor. So although the money supply in America has gone up hyperbolically for decades, wages have stayed flat. Mm-hmm. You know, back in the 70s, as late as the 70s, before Reagan, you would have wage price spirals. If they printed too much money, it would show up in wages. So actually, in the 1970s, there was inflation, but wages were relatively high, and so the working class was actually having a bit of a boom at that time, and Wall Street was crashing, and Main Street was actually doing well because they were benefiting from those higher wages. So under Reagan, that was crushed, and you had this period that we're still in, which is you've got accelerated money printing, but it doesn't hit wages, and so now we're in this situation where the question is, if you're a working class, first of all, who are we fighting against? Like, who's the enemy in all this? Is it ideological? Is it political? So, I would posit that the enemy is the guys printing all this fake money, because somehow when they print a lot of fake money, it ends up going to the banks, and then it kind of stays in the banks. The banks don't make the loans. They're not making loans. And they end up just giving it to their friends who are buying penthouse apartments on Park Avenue or Hamptons Estates or fine art, et cetera. So it's a problem of distribution, and this is called the Cantillon effect. There's actually an economic term for this in terms of how money that gets printed is not distributed, and we know it for a fact. If you look at something called the money velocity chart, it shows you how fast money is circulating. So all this money printing that we just talked about, well, how fast is it circulating? How fast is it getting into the workers' hands? The answer is that chart is almost at zero. For the last 20 years, it's gone straight down. It's not circulating. They're printing, but wages aren't going up, and that's the divide. So if the question is, why isn't this money circulating, and why are workers not being paid a living wage, and why are workers can't make ends meet? It's because the money itself, this fiat money, it is being printed in a way that is great if you're a friend of Wall Street and you're getting billions of it at 0% interest. Yeah. You're making out like a bandit. You've got assets that are going up in value, and you can borrow against those assets at almost 0% cost and buy more assets, right? So the problem is, for the working class, the problem is the central bank. That's the problem. And so the people on the left, the people in the Democratic Party, the people, the woke folks, the AOC, they're not talking about the central bank. They're not talking about the central bank. As a matter of fact, they're talking about they need to print more money, right? They're saying we need more debt, more rent relief. We need more of this. Well, all that money printing is just, you get a little sugar high, but it causes inflation, and you lose in the end. You're going to lose more in the end because the cost of food and energy is going to be higher than the sugar high of getting that immediate stimulus check from the government. The government check doesn't mind sending you all this funny money because they're the ones who are buying in the assets that are used as collateral that they can use to build these enormous portfolios. So that's my answer. My answer is, what's a communist? What's in it for communists? Here's my pitch to the communists in the audience. If you want workers to get adequately compensated for their work, you need to go from having this fiat money, infinitely printable garbage cash dollar to something that's going to hold its value over time going forward. You want to be paid something that is going to hold its value into the future. No worker would argue against that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I can do about 5 of these shows. I have so many questions. At this point in the show, I was thinking, do I ask a question about mercantilism? Because I learned about mercantilism from watching your show. Or do we talk about somebody who's pretty well respected in the group of people we hang with, Catherine Austin Fitts? We have a little clip here. It's a couple minutes max, but I want you to take a look at it, and then I want you to give me your opinions on this whole situation. About what Catherine says over here, because Catherine is pretty well respected. She was just recently on Whitney Webb, or Whitney Webb was on her show. So take a listen. This was about from February, and give us your opinions on what Catherine has to say.
Okay.
You got to know what you're doing. And with the Bitcoin per unit.
that for you right now.
No sound. No sound.
1 second.
I got a no sound.
Hold on 1 sec.
Oh, okay.
We'll get it for you, okay?
This is my, yeah.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Is this loud? Is it loud?
All right, let me read it real quick then. Let's see if I can get to the article. Oh man. 2 seconds. Are you familiar with Catherine Austin Fitz?
Yeah, I've interviewed her many times. Not in the last few years though.
Yeah. Well, I can't find the article. Well, pretty much he was saying that central bankers have enough money to print as much fiat currency as they want, to buy up as much Bitcoin as they can. And I was and then eventually she's saying that we're building our own prison because therefore the central bankers, the hedge funds, they can get together, almost kind of what Wall Street bets did, the way they collectively work together to drive a price of the stock up, that they can do the reverse in Bitcoin. And they can actually crash Bitcoin because they'll have so much ways, because they want to move people into digital currencies. And she said that maybe we should spend some of our money to buy local stuff, our local farmer, our local banker, our local, nutritionist, whatever the case may be, that we need to buy assets locally, of actual physical things that we'll need, rather than just invest all our money into Bitcoin.
Right. So first of all, as I was saying, proof of stake versus proof of work. If you have a lot of Bitcoin, you can't change the protocol. Doesn't matter if you have a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion worth of Bitcoin. You cannot change the protocol. So that's point number one. Point number two is that I absolutely expect the U.S. government, if it comes to its senses, to start printing money and buying Bitcoin. And so will the Swiss National Bank, the EU, Russia, China. In other words, you have a global hash war. It's the second one of these G20 countries tips their hand and say, we're actually going to start buying a lot of Bitcoin. That'll set off this global hash war to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. And this is exactly what we want, because then the security of the network goes up, and the hash rate goes up, and the price goes up. And it draws money out of the fiat world. And that we want to draw as much money out of the fiat world and out of the gold world as possible to defund the central banks, to defund the Federal Reserve, defund the gold market. So this is exactly what we want. Once you have, but in other words, she's describing an asymmetric outcome where one country has an outsized percentage of this that will give them a swing vote in terms of the price going forward. But that would not be the outcome. The outcome would be like a Saudi Arabia has an enormous amount of cash and energy on the sidelines, and they're looking for a way to diversify their economy because the oil market is contracting in a big way, right? So they get into it. So you have essentially, it's called game theory, right? The game theory is like a Mexican standoff. Everyone's pointing a gun at everybody, and nobody has an advantage, but they're all trying to compete with each other. And we've seen this going from day one in Bitcoin.
Slow.
Game theory has worked out beautifully since day one. We just saw an enormously interesting example of this with China. China decided they're going to shut the Bitcoin miners. So they moved 40 or 50% of the entire mining capacity out of China. The hash rate, the computational power that drives the network, dropped by 60% in a couple of days. And yet those blocks came every 10 minutes, tick-tock, next block, never interrupted. The miners went out to Texas. They went to Uzbekistan. They spread out all over the world, and now 2-3 weeks later, hash rate's moving back up again. Hash rate will hit a new all-time high soon, and so will price. So the system is perfectly balanced in a way that no single entity can game it in a way that's strategically outmaneuvering anybody else in the system. So in that regard, she doesn't fully take on board all of the actual aspects of how this protocol works and how it's been working now for 12 years.
No. Max, our sound is acting a little wonky right now for some reason. We don't know why. Yeah, this is the first time it ever happens. I think the central banks are zapping us right now and not letting your message get through. But we'll be able to pick it up on our end, hopefully, as we re-put this video out. But I want to thank you for coming out today, man, and doing this.
Yeah.
We were looking to maybe possibly come see you in Phoenix on Thursday, but I think this show is sold out now. Is that true?
I'll check into it.
Yeah. Let me know, because if so, I can drop on a quick plane, get on over there, go see you and Stacy in person, and get my butt back to L.A. when I need to.
Yeah, just drop me an email, and I'll see what the status is on that. Yeah, it's August 19th in Phoenix. We're doing a live event, the follow-up to our Austin event, so it's kind of like a Bitcoin victory party, and hook up with a lot of local Bitcoiners, and should be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Would you still say it's early, though, for Bitcoin right now? Like my mom who's listening out there to maybe get involved with Bitcoin, because she's scared, because even her money manager is telling her, well, the price is up too high. It's too volatile. What are your thoughts on the timing right now of Bitcoin? Is it still early?
Well, first of all, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So you can buy a fraction of it. You can put $10, $20 into Bitcoin. You don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. So that's the first thing. Second of all, you have to look at what would be the eventual market. You know, what market is Bitcoin conquering, right? You know, and that would be the global cash of investable assets right now is about $200 trillion worth of investable assets. If you look at the gold market, stock market, bond market. And so Bitcoin is competing in that arena. So we're from the current price, you know, I'm looking for, you know, a more than 100x from here. So up 100 times from its current price.
Yeah. I've showed videos of my mom, of you saying, I guarantee it's going to go to 1 million. Get it now. So my mom's like, I don't know about Max.
I mean, people hear new things from people that they've never heard from before, and they immediately reject it. You know, people like to hear like a money manager that they're familiar with for years say the same thing over and over again, and you're gonna get the same results. You know, the problem is that if you're not protected against this runaway inflation, you're gonna get eaten alive by it, and so that really narrows the scope down to just 2 or 3 things that you can possibly invest in to protect yourself. And Bitcoin, in my view, is the best option. With paper money, with fiat money, it's not volatile, but you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power, and that's been true for 300 years. No paper money has survived, or every single paper money that's ever been introduced for 300 years has lost between 99 and 100% of its purchasing power.
Yep.
Okay. With gold, you're guaranteed to maintain purchasing power. You know, an ounce of gold in ancient Rome could buy you a nice suit. An ounce of gold here in the 21st century can buy you a nice suit. Gold maintains its purchasing power. With Bitcoin, it's volatile, but you're guaranteed, mathematically guaranteed, to increase your purchasing power. In a world that's entirely run up by fiat money, by central banks that have gotten themselves into a very sticky situation where they cannot, under any circumstances, raise rates without tripping the economy into an immediate catastrophic contraction. They are bound to print to infinity. That's where we're at. And in that scenario, Bitcoin is guaranteed to increase purchasing power. Yes, it's volatile, but I'd rather have some volatility and have my purchasing power go up than be in US dollars with no volatility and a guarantee that my purchasing power goes down.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'd love to have you back on to discuss some more, but really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Next time.
Well, my pleasure.
Next time you got to have Stacy on with us so we can have some fun. And you know what I'm saying? And everybody, go watch the Orange Pill podcast. It is amazing. We're calling it No Fucks Given with Max Keiser and Stacy. It's an amazing show. And good luck on Thursday. Let us know if you can sneak us in. We might show up. Thanks again, Max. I'm going to tell my mom to help me buy some more Bitcoin.
Yeah, do it. All right, see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I think we're gonna have to end it.
Really?
And then and then I don't know what happened. The input captured, like they can't even hear me. They can only hear you guys.
Oh, you guys can only hear. You guys can hear us. Okay.
I don't know what happened. Check. One second.
Hello?
You can't hear me.
Nope.
I can hear you guys.
Now fee is out, it says.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened. I literally didn't change anything. So.
All right, guys. We're gonna bust out of here from now, and then we're gonna come back later when we get it fixed, if we get it fixed. Yeah, thank you so much, and we'll be back soon.
They hear me, they said.
Now they can hear you. Fee is good.
I hear both of you, but like it's not. I can't do it.
Barely hear you all. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna get on out of here, guys. We're gonna come on back. We gotta fix our technical difficulties. Sorry about that. We'll see you in a little bit.